Hello and welcome to this new show on Coracle's laptops, streaming into prisons. We're in this amazing Coracle studio, thanks to the team at Disruptive Live for helping put this together. And what we're going to do is have a few guests on this show talking about their experiences of prison and specifically education. So to get straight on with the show, I'm going to introduce the guy who's going to be hosting this for us. It's David Breakspear. He's got a history of lived experience, and he's going to be talking to Jose Aguirre from HMP Pentonville.
Thank you, James. Looking forward to speaking to our next guest, who's Jose Aguirre. Jose, hi, how you doing?
Hi, I'm very well. Good. Very good to see you again.
So, Jose, your role in HMP Pentonville. Tell me about it.
Okay, so I can say that I started working in prison education 18 years ago.
Right.
And I've been working in different prisons up and down the country, but at this moment I'm more based in Pentonville. So I've been working in Pentonville anyway since 2012, and working at the same time in different prisons. But at this moment I'm more particularly based in Pentonville. So my role in terms of in Pentonville is to try to broaden the curriculum, the offer, and broaden the opportunities that the men in our care can have access in terms of education. So what I'll try to do is to bring new topics. I try to bring new subject areas. I'll try to bring different courses and different projects obviously to provide the opportunity for the guys to choose. I think is the prison curriculum, prison education curriculum is quite narrow. I think it's really important for us to widen their opportunities, to offer different subject areas, to have that offer, to unlock potential in terms of different areas. What I'll try to do as well in terms of education is try to provide opportunities for progression. So the offer in terms of prison education is quite low. As you know, level 1 is level 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? So I think it's really important for us to provide opportunities for progression and to our expectations about the prison population. So I have high expectations about the prison population.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes the offer doesn't have that expectation. It's just an expectation to progress to a certain level and provide education that doesn't really raise that much expectation. So my point from the very beginning that I started to work in prison education in 2005 in Feltham Young Offenders. I think it was really, really important for us as educators to raise expectations, for us to have high expectations of our learners, and obviously provide opportunities for them to progress and to have their lives transformed through education.
So, I mean, 18 years is a long time. I mean, 18 years in prison is a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
as you know. What's kept you passionate for the last 18 years?
Good question. So I'm very passionate about education, and obviously how education can transform lives and can transform societies. But since I started to work in prison, so I could really see the impact of education in prison and how it can really impact on the guys in prison, and actually how it can transform their lives. I can see it in front of my eyes. That is definitely, I think, the best reward that any educator or human being can have, is to see that change. So you can start to see the guys really discovering skills and the potential that they never thought that they had, or because that potential was never unlocked, that potential was never untapped, or because the conditions were never there. So for me, the fact of seeing the transformation in their lives to change their identity. I can see the guys moving from what you are, I'm a prisoner, and then from becoming a learner. So start to see that they are much more than a prisoner. They can achieve and they can progress. So, and that feeling of changing, of seeing this transformation, is definitely, I think, the best reward that any educator, or as a human being, but particularly we as educators, can see that life changing, and the impact of what we are doing, obviously, on our learners.
Well, that really resonates with me, because one of the best things that happened for me in turning my life around was becoming a mentor for Shannon Trust, and following that, I've become a listener for the Samaritans, and then become an education mentor. And the benefits that I didn't see for me as an individual, for me as a mentor, were massive. I got a lot more out of becoming a mentor than I ever did doing an offender behaviour course, because I started to learn about me. I really started to, not just about learning about me and where I come from, but also learning about who I can be, and I can be a better person. Talking of change and transition, though, in 18 years in education in prison, you must have seen some changes, some good, some not so good. But what do you think have been some of the best changes that we've seen in prison education?
Well, I think the prison education really needs to become more targeting more the populations, to be more tailor-made to the population that we have in our care, and that obviously depends from establishment to establishment. So I think the prison contracts, if you like, or the prison education would need to be tailored to the establishment, or to different establishments. So I think the prison education has been there's some steps forward and then some steps backwards. I think the only thing that is still there is I think mainly the fact that the educators in prison and prison educators really are there to try to help the prison population. So in terms of changes, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot. So what I saw differently was the role of technology. So technology changed, and I think that was what's really important. And even if you look we can look in terms of a positive consequence of COVID, was definitely the prisons start to become much more open in terms of use of technology, and that has been amazing. So because first of all, it provides much more opportunities for study in terms of prison population. It embeds as well something that is really important, that is digital skills. And we know that unfortunately a lot of a big percentage of prison population don't have those skills, that obviously, and if they don't have it, it's very, very difficult to operate in this modern world, where we all depend on technology, or if it is for learning, it is for work, applying for jobs, everything, is around technology. So, and I think, that change was really important, not just to enable the learners in prison, to have access to different courses, but as well to develop those skills that are not so necessary for them to progress in terms of education, but as well to progress in terms of employment and to function in society. So I think that was something that obviously we still still in that journey. But I think that has been really important, to have the technology or have more access to technology in prison.
And the more that people can access digital technology in prison, the more invisible the walls become, if you like. One thing that I've really enjoyed about what you do at Pentonville is your celebration of success, which you invited me in. Where did that come from, if you like? What made you decide to do this celebration of success?
Yeah, so we always try to celebrate the achievements of our learners. So the celebration of success is a monthly event where we bring all the learners that that completed courses in different areas, in different educational areas, and we try to and we put a ceremony where we invite people like yourself that obviously transform their lives through education in prison. But it's mainly about recognize, the achievements in prison, because as we know, sometimes in prison, studying in prison sometimes can be very challenging. So because of the prison environment, because obviously of the lack of movement, sometimes the simple fact of living in a cell with someone else that obviously has different priorities, that is not education. So the fact of achieving something in prison, takes a lot of effort to navigate through all the contingencies in the prison, but as well sometimes takes a lot of effort from the individual, in terms of overcoming fears, lack of confidence, all those kind of things. So this monthly ceremony is mainly to celebrate, obviously, all that journey that those individuals went through to achieve their qualifications, and obviously that took the opportunities that are offered in prison. I think is really important, for as well for prisoners, to try to ensure in some way that there's a lot of education offered in prison, and for them to take that sometimes that leap forward and try to engage in prison education. But is mainly for us to recognize, that achievement in a very difficult conditions, in an environment that is not really conducive to learning. But they were able, to navigate through those difficulties and getting into the right destination, if you like, and obviously try to motivate them to progress, not just stay there, but obviously progress throughout their qualification. The humanness, if you like, of each individual comes up, and there's much more similarities than differences, and this has been expanding through the process, through the wings, and develop these relationships between prisoners and prison officers, because obviously learning is not just in a classroom, but obviously what we'd like to see is a learning prison where learning happens throughout every area in the prison.
What a great way to end the talk. Jose, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure as usual.
Thank you, Jose.
Thanks very much, David and Jose. That was fascinating. And for all of you watching on these laptops, just to remind you, we've got these in 86 prisons around the country now. So do make sure your friends know they can watch this show. And now David is going to talk down the line, he's going to talk to David Morgan from Entrepreneurs Unlocked, and he's going to talk to Daryl Kennedy.
Thank you, James. And next with me is David Morgan from the company Entrepreneurs Unlocked, and I believe he has his own guest with him, Daryl. So, David, if you'd like to introduce yourself and Daryl, please.
Certainly will. So, good to see you, David. So, David Morgan, I'm the founder and director of Entrepreneurs Unlocked. We're a CIC based up in Greater Manchester, and we work with people in prison and people on probation who want to explore self-employment as a way to earn an income upon release. with me is Daryl, who I've been working with. So I'll let Daryl do a quick introduction.
Hi, my name's Daryl Kennedy. I'm an ex-international cat burglar. I was introduced to David through my connections with Rebuild with Hope, which is a charity who connected me with the shed through probation services, and that's how I met David.
And how long's Entrepreneurs Unlocked been going, David?
So Entrepreneurs Unlocked actually is 4 years next week. So we've been trading since end of October 2019.
Daryl, if I can ask you a question, what difference has Entrepreneurs Unlocked made to your life?
Well, it's allowed me to meet David and to change the way I think about my future by becoming a self-employed public speaker.
Okay, so in those 4 years, David, what number do you think you've helped over the 4 years?
Okay, so I'm lucky to say that in the last 4 years, we've probably engaged with over 500 people, doing talks in prisons, working with people on probation. So that could be anything from them coming to listening to me talking about how they could use entrepreneurial skills to think about running a business, to becoming a subcontractor on site. We've probably helped set up probably between 40 and 50 people in that time to start earning an income, being self-employed. And some people have decided that maybe working for themselves isn't for them, and they've gone into work because they've recognised they have some skills and talents that they can use for an employer.
And what sort of impact are you having in respect of reducing reoffending? I mean, how many people haven't reoffended that work with Entrepreneurs Unlocked?
So, as far as we're aware, I mean, we're probably looking at 80% of the people that we've been able to find, into work haven't reoffended, which is a really, really good, which obviously is better than the national average in terms of the work that we do. But I think sometimes when we work in the prisons, we don't always get to know the outcome of that person when they get released. So, but what we're trying to do is help people think about it as a pathway in the future. So it may be that some of the people I work with, are on longer sentences as well, David. So, as you know, people are on IPP as well. So they don't quite have a release date yet, but we're trying to move them closer to their goal by thinking about using their skills in a different way.
And Daryl, what do you hope that the future holds for you now that you've gone through the Entrepreneurs Unlocked program?
Future really lies where I'm giving my personal experiences to Greater Manchester Police and the Cumbria Police. At this moment, I've given 12 sessions to them. But my initial forward moving is to get into prisons and try and change the way of thinking for the average burglar who's in prison, and basically, change the way they think.
Well, everyone deserves a second chance, don't they? Or even a first chance, really. Not everyone's been given a first chance.
Everybody. Yeah, and I think that's quite right. People in prison, they're there to serve their punishment. They're not there to be punished. We know from our conversations it's about, providing a rehabilitative culture, isn't it? So when they come out of prison, they have a different mindset. And I think what's really good that we try to do with Daryl is to say to go into the prisons and talk to people on probation or prison officers or sort of police to help them understand the mindset of someone who maybe have been in prison, but also help other people think about, well, it may be glamorous, for a while, but actually, in the end, it isn't overly glamorous, is it, Daryl, in terms of where we're at the moment?
No.
A lived experience for me is something that in the last couple of years has appeared to become a movement. And the voice of lived experience appears to be having more and more positive impact on the system. Is that something that you see, Daryl?
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I find that the probation services get a bad reputation, really, for not being able to do anything for ex-offenders when they come out of prison. But my experience with the probation service here in Greater Manchester, the Salford probation, they couldn't do anything more for me. They've gone out the textbook to help me to get to where I am now today. So a big shout to the probation service.
Do you know what? I've got to admit that my previous relationship or history of relationship with probation hasn't always been the best. But I knew this time that I wanted to turn my life around. And I knew that if I wanted to do that, I would have to engage with probation because they are a part of the process. It's something that you have to do when you're released from prison, whether you like it or not. And the more that you can work with them, I think you're right, Daryl, the more probation will support you. If they think that you're doing the right things for the right reasons, they will support you. So yeah, I second that shout out to probation.
I can just sort of chip in as well, sort of, David, and I think, what Darryl was saying, I have from an experience, probation officers, they want to work people that are positive, that can not cause them any hassle, not going to give them any sort of problems, so they're willing to engage with that. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the project that I'm running here in Salford, is, to engage with probation, find people that they think would be interested in coming to our sort of self-employment sort of programs here, and hope to get the good referrals so we can help them change more sort of people's lives. Is to say, Daryl's going to be like a professional speaker, but we're helping other people just on the side, to become gardeners, cleaners, plasterers, painters and decorators. So, if probation know that person is, having a productive and meaningful, sort of conversation and working towards a productive and meaningful sort of life, then that helps reduce their risk down, and you can have a more sort of positive aspects. And
I think one problem with
he's got a good story to tell, isn't he? So if we can use that to help him earn an income by telling his story and being honest and open, not glamorising what it is, but bit of a reality check in terms of it could be good while it lasts, but actually in the end, the long arm of the law just find it. So that's where we're trying to get to with Darryl.
And as you're really both saying there, the opportunities exist. They do exist. Although that it's all doom and gloom about the criminal justice system at the moment, the opportunities do exist for you to be able to turn your life around.
Very much so, yeah. And I think it's back to what you said earlier, isn't it? It's engaging with probation, finding the right partner. I mean, again, since Darryl and I have been working together, my network has been sort of stepped up. People with lived experience, and again, shout out to people like Graham Frost, John Reed, the storyteller fella. They've offered their time, to sort of mentor sort of Darryl, which is fantastic because they recognise themselves how hard it is to break in to the prison system. Which is probably not the right word, but probably you know what I mean. To offer that insights, to people that sort of would really benefit from that lived experience. And I think you're quite right. That whole sort of lived experience movement, with people like yourselves and other people, are pushing that ahead, and it's a far more valuable experience than just someone who, maybe is academically read a textbook. You have to have that knowledge and first-hand experience to use it.
And like anything in life, the people that are most impacted, as people with lived experience of the criminal justice system are, the more that you can speak to them, the quicker you're going to find the solutions to make things right.
Very much so. And I think I'm really sort of privileged, so within my professional network is, a number of people, are former prisoners and have recognised that there's a problem that they've not been able to solve while in custody, and set up companies and organisations to then, provide that solution to someone coming through the criminal justice system, and I think having that insight from being someone who, was a person in prison and then the challenges of coming out into probation, but actually, they've had a different direction, like Darryl now, and they're now in a position where, they are helping others, to sort of find ways to help themselves and, not reoffend and, drug and rehabilitation, employment services, and people like yourself, David, being that sort of voice of the person with lived experience, and, your articulations in your, musings is really valuable, and I think it's very insightful. So, yeah, fair play to you, fella.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And here's a question for you, Darryl. If tomorrow morning you woke up and you were given the position of Secretary of State for Justice, what would be your top 3 priorities to change the system?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I think should be changed at the high end and should be made what I call compulsory is the fact of historical justice. In my case, I had a lot of victims, over 20,000 victims of properties that had entered in the UK. And I feel, while I stepped forward and did the historical justice, I feel the impact to me changed the way I thought. about a victimless crime, and there's no victimless crime, there is victims, and those people should have a say, and they should be able to put a face to the person who violated their home. So I did that full hands-on, and I feel that it should be compulsory that a burglar, once he's been sentenced, if the victims want to see him, he has to face them. And that would be a big impact, not only for them, but for him himself. It would change the way he thinks. Secondly, I would say that, the probation service who I deal with, because I got a 10-year sentence, they've been with me all the way through it. And where I wanted to change, they've changed with me and helped me every step of the way. Other than that, I would put the sentences for burglary from the way they deal with it is all wrong. I don't believe people should get just a slap on the wrist and a community service after one burglary, because they've not committed that one burglary and it's a serious offence. So they should be sent to prison on that first occasion and not let off, and then the second let off, and then only go to prison on the third occasion. I just feel the system is wrong. It needs changing.
Well, Daryl, David, I just want to thank you both for the time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And now David is going to have a conversation with Robert. This is a really special conversation. Robert is a former IPP prisoner. I think you're going to find this fascinating.
Thank you, James. Coming up next, we've got Robert. Robert is an IPP prisoner, and we all know how much the IPP has had a stain on the criminal justice system since David Bunker introduced it in 2004. Fortunately, it's now off the statute books. However, there are still thousands of people languishing in prisons on IPP. But today, we've got Robert with us, who is a former IPP prisoner. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hiya, yeah. Nice to see you, David. My name's Robert. I'm an ex-IPP prisoner. Was sentenced in 2006 with a 21-month tariff, and was finally released in 2018 after serving 3 months shy of 12 years. I'm now 5 years post-release and kind of, rebuilding life in the community, really.
Congratulations for that. I mean, I've done a number of prison sentences myself, but I've never been an indeterminate prisoner. And for me, one thing that really stands out is hope. How do you keep hope as someone on an IPP in prison?
There were points where, to be honest, I completely lost all hope. I mean, when I actually first got sentenced, I didn't understand what an IPP was. I didn't understand that, the type of sentence I'd received. And it was only when I was back in my remand prison at Belmarsh, and the lifer manager come to see me, and I said, I'm really sorry, why have you come to see me? I only got 21 months. And she put my name in the computer while I was sat with her in this office, and she turned the screen around and I could see next to my name it said 99 years. And to say hopelessness just washed over me would be an understatement, and you kind of, how do you deal with that? How do you mentally put yourself in a position where you don't know if or when you're going to be back out in the community? Overall, as kind of time goes on, you have to be the maker of your own hope on an indeterminate sentence, and whether that's through progressing through the system, doing courses and stuff like that, and kind of ticking the boxes, playing the game, but all of these things actually then start to build hope, that eventually you're going to progress and you're going to either get a decal or release, or kind of make your way to the end. And it can take a long time, and I know there's still fellas that are probably still trying to get that at the moment, but it can happen. It's not always easy, but it certainly is achievable.
Well, of course, obviously you're living proof of that. What was getting out of prison like for you? I mean, that must have been a bit of a shock.
Yeah, it was a massive shock. I think a little bit probably, unlike a lot of other people, I didn't go to an open prison. When I went for a parole board, I actually spent a little while on pipe units within the prison system. So kind of like psychologically informed units where I was doing a lot of work and stuff like that on myself. And I went up for parole with a release plan, but kind of fully expecting them to say, no, no, go to DCAT for a little while and that kind of thing. And they didn't. They released me straight from closed conditions from a Cat C prison. And that was really interesting, for want of a better word. You know, to walk out after 12 years, the world was a completely different place, really. You know, I won't sit here and say that I'd never seen a smartphone because, you know, we all know that they're in there in the prison system, but I'd never used one, I'd never handled one, and all of a sudden, you know, these things were everywhere. And there was one incident where I actually went to buy a birthday card, and the woman in front of me paid at the till by tapping her phone to the card reader. And I went over and said, "What did she just do with her phone?" And the woman behind the counter looked at me like, "Have you been living in space for the last 20 years?" You know, and it was kind of, well, yeah. And it's just, you know, realizing how quickly the world moves on can be quite scary. And there are moments like where especially in the first few weeks, where I kind of sat there and said to myself, I don't know whether I can do this. You know, I know in prison I'm comfortable. I get my 3 meals a day, and you know, I get told when to go behind my door and when to come out and when to go to work and when to do this and and all of a sudden I've got all of this freedom. The world's this great big place, and it was quite scary, to be honest. But you know, that's where you've got to use the support networks that are available to you as well.
Do you think, I mean, obviously nowadays that the staff are so inexperienced, do you think that they're fully aware of the impact that IPPs have on people in prison?
No, not at all. I think the overall impact, you know, there were very few IPPs I met who I think were mentally strong the whole way through their sentence. You know, and sometimes I question even the ones that I met that did appear that way, you know, what they're like when they're behind their door or things like that. But it has a huge impact, not just on the prisoners, but on the families as well. You know, my family never knew if when I was coming home, you know, I'd go up for a parole board and get knocked back, and you know, it's the impact of the sentence. I've seen literature saying that it's barbaric and inhumane and stuff like that, you know, and to a point it is. I understand the thinking of why they brought them out and what it was kind of set to achieve. I think the problem with the IPP was that at its height, and that was when I was sentenced in 2006, they were effectively being handed out like kind of biscuits, really, from courts, and just thousands and thousands of people getting IPPs with silly tariffs that was never going to be achievable.
And what you say about the, I suppose, resilience and the mental strength, what support did you access in prison, or what did you do in prison? What did you access in prison to, not, I suppose, to make it easier for you, if you like, in prison?
From my own point of view, when I first went in, I didn't want to access any services. I didn't want any help. I was 21 years old. You know, I thought I was bigger, better than the system, that kind of thing. But over time, I kind of realised that I couldn't go that way, not just for achieving release, but also for achieving my own stability and stuff like that. So engaging with mental health services within the prison system, engaging on the what I refer to as the lower level courses. So, you know, things like your PASRO and, you know, all of them courses that seem to be for everybody. And then as I kind of advanced more, I engaged in, so I said before about being on the pipe unit. So that's a psychologically informed planned environment. It was a wing of a prison, and they're in several prisons now, I believe, but it was a specific wing where it was run by psychologists as well as prison staff, and part of your routine was engaging in groups and one-to-ones and stuff like that. And then also, one of the biggest enemies from prisoners' point of view is probation. They can actually be one of your biggest allies if if you can really utilize them and use them and that kind of thing, both in prison and out of prison. Probation can be a really great help as well.
So going back to, sorry I keep taking you back in prison again. One thing that I noticed that changed over the years was the amount of availability through digital platforms. Did you notice that, Robert? And if so, did you take any advantage of that?
Yeah, I went and done my Open University. I done a psychology course, my degree while I was in, and being able to go to things like the library, and there was actually in one prison there was a classroom specifically set up to be like for online learning and stuff like that, and being able to get on, and kind of liaise with tutors. Obviously, everything was monitored and supervised and stuff like that, but it opened up a whole array of opportunities within prison, for myself and others to then go and better themselves and get qualifications, and not just the qualification, but I think the confidence that comes with that as well, that you can then use when you get back out into the community.
All right, let's quickly get you back out of jail again. Being released as an IPP prisoner, what do you think that others that under that same situation when they're being released, what should they consider? But also not just them, but also what should the support agency consider when they're supporting someone being released that's on IPP?
I think from the prisoner's point of view, don't try and rush it. If you've been in for a while, and if you're an IPP or a lifer and you're coming out now, then yeah, you've been in for a while, definitely. Don't rush it. Take one day at a time. Use support networks, friends, family, professionals. When I first came out, I was in an AP, an approved premises, and the staff there were absolutely fantastic. There were days where I wouldn't say I was scared to walk out the door, but it was just it was such a surreal feeling of being allowed to, and they'd sit down and have a chat with you and stuff like that, and just be aware that when you come out, things are going to be very different to when you went in. As I said earlier, the world moves on at an extraordinary pace, and unfortunately, while you're in prison, it don't take you with it. So you've got to play catch up when you come out. And again, that can be daunting, but baby steps. Don't overwhelm yourself, that kind of thing. From the other side of it, for what people should be aware of, supporting IPPs on release, it kind of just all of that, but flip it, offer that support, offer that. Don't try and bombard with too much at once. Pretty much as soon as I left the AP, I was being asked about, finding a job and while you have to do all of these things, you have to find income, you have to make sure your accommodation's sorted and your bills are sorted and all of that kind of stuff. It can be an awful lot at once. And again, when you're just trying to get used to the world around you, it can be all of that kind of stuff that eventually makes someone go, I haven't got to deal with all of this when I'm in prison. Do you know what? I feel safer and just life's easier there. So that can lead to reoffending by putting too much onto someone at once. So I'm in a really, really good place now. I'm 5 years post-release. So for those that aren't aware of how the IPP license works, although it is a life license, it's a minimum of 10 years. So after 10 years, I can effectively have my license removed by the parole board. However, being 5 years post-release, I've just passed the stage where I'm allowed to have my supervision suspended And only a week ago, I found out from the parole board that I've now had my supervision suspended. So what this basically means is that I am still on licence, and if I do mess up, it's a case of don't pass go, don't collect £200 straight back to jail, or whatever probation decide. But I now I don't have to go to probation anymore. All of my licence conditions, other than good behaviour and that kind of thing, have now been revoked. So I don't have to get approval to leave the country. I'm allowed to go on holiday. I'm allowed to go and reside at a friend's house for a week without them having to phone them up and say, "Oh, do you know what he was in for? And are you happy with him staying at your house?" and all of that. So that's where I'm at currently. My hopes for the future is just to kind of carry on as I'm going. I've got a job that I'm really enjoying. I'm in a stable relationship. I hope to carry on with all of that, and in 2028, I'll be putting my application into the parole board to have my licence removed completely.
No, it's brilliant. Honestly, just fantastic, Robert. And really, I suppose the theme of the talk there is don't give up hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't give up hope, because even in them, darkest moments, it will get better. It may take some time, and it may not seem like it's going to happen for a while, but it will. And if you stick at it and keep going, then there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I wish you every continued success, Robert, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing that story with us. I find that a really remarkable experience. And that's why I want to introduce you to two more guests now that we've recorded previously. And these are two guys who were held hostage in the 1980s out in Libya. And I think there's some similarities between this IPP and the lack of sense of hope and how you can keep yourself going. So I'd like to introduce you to John McCarthy and to Terry Waite, and let's hear their story.
Hello, I'm John McCarthy, and I wanted to share a few thoughts with you about my experiences of prison and why I think the Coracle laptop project is such a great idea. Many years ago, back in 1986, I was working as a journalist in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, during the long civil war in that country. Like a number of other Westerners, I got caught up in the conflict when I was kidnapped and held hostage by one of the militia groups involved in the war. I was held captive for over 5 years, kept in cells and rooms without daylight and chained up. I had no contact at all with the outside world. It was a very difficult and frightening experience, never knowing what could happen next and never knowing how long the ordeal would last. I was very lucky to have some remarkable men as my cellmates. We kept each other going as best we could, but as well as the tension and anxiety of captivity, we also had to deal with the endless days of doing nothing, just sitting on thin mattresses on the floor with nothing to stimulate or occupy our minds. It was very boring. Obviously, we hadn't chosen to be together. We were just a random collection of men snatched from the streets by our kidnappers. We all came from very different backgrounds and countries. We were of different ages, and quite likely would not have become friends if we just met in ordinary free times. But locked up, we had nowhere and no one else to go to, so we talked and talked about our previous lives, things we'd done, places we'd been to, and people we'd met. And the interesting thing was that the differences between us, that might have kept us apart in the free world, proved to be an amazing resource in captivity. We could learn from each other and our different experiences. But we still needed more to keep our brains working, so we were always nagging our guards for books to read, so that we could have stories and ideas to think and talk about that would help us get our heads outside of the narrow physical confines we were held in. Often we'd go for months without anything to read, and then when we did get a book or two, it might be some out-of-date manual or just a bad novel. Sometimes, though, we got classics of literature, and maybe the best thing was the time we had a few volumes from an encyclopedia. This was back in the days before the internet, so it was like having a bit of Google, if you like, to use for our research and entertainment. It was great. We could jump from book to book, trying to do research into whatever topic grabbed our attention. It was limited, of course, and we were not allowed pen or paper, so we had to keep all our thoughts and everything in our heads. but we could think more about the world we were missing so much. We could learn new things, we could make plans for what we wanted to do and where we'd go once we were released. It meant that though we were still living in the weird limbo land of a prison environment, we could make use of all the time we had on our hands and feel connected with the real world and prepare ourselves for a better, brighter future. Sometimes in those long periods when I had no books or news from the outside world, I remember each day seemed to last forever because I was so bored. But then one day I'd wake up and realize that another few months of my life had gone by in a flash, and I'd done nothing. It felt like my life was just evaporating, empty and unused. It was really, really depressing. That's why the books were so important, and to have had a Coracle laptop would have been truly life-changing, giving me mental stimulus and the chance to study things that would give me options and hope for what I do after prison. As I said earlier, when I was banged up, the internet didn't exist. There were no mobile phones, and computers were great hunky desktop things. I'm 66 now, and I'm always trying to catch up with the technology we have available to us these days. So apart from following coursework, I love the idea that Coracle builds digital skills. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me going on about stuff from a long time ago, but I hope it maybe strikes a chord with your situation now. Good luck with your Coracle work, stay strong, and very best wishes for the future.
Hello, everybody. My name's Terry Waite. And if you're under 40, you probably won't know that name. But if you're over 40, there's a good chance that you will, because many years ago, I was working as a hostage negotiator. And one of the hazards of that work is that you can either get killed or captured, and it's a risk you take. Eventually, after a number of successful negotiations, I was taken captive and spent 5 years in solitary confinement. So I know what it's like to be confined in that way. I had no books or papers, nothing for many, many years. And when anyone came in the room, I had to be blindfolded, and I was chained to the wall for 23 hours and 50 minutes a day, just one visit to the bathroom. So it was pretty isolated, pretty difficult time. One of the things I learned from that, if you're going to survive in that sort of a situation, is that you have to recognize that your life is not over. You still have life, and you still have an opportunity to make something of that life. You've got to have the will, and you've got to be able to keep hope alive. Now, I had no access to books or papers, and I certainly never had access to a computer. That would have been absolutely marvelous, because it would have given me an opportunity to expand my mind and probably to develop in ways that I never thought that I should develop. I had to just use my brain, and I began to write in my head. If I'd have had books, or if I'd have had a computer, my word, that would have been absolutely wonderful. Now, you've got an opportunity to have a computer in your cell. That's a new development, and something that really you ought to seize with both hands. Whilst, of course, you'll not be allowed to have access to the internet, at least you will have access to a whole range of programs. And that's something that's well worth investigating. So consider this as really being an opportunity, and take your time inside to view this as an opportunity to develop in ways that perhaps you would never have thought of developing in the past. Let me wish you all success. And if I come to your prison, as I still do many prison visits, I hope you'll look me out, and I hope I'll be able to see you. And I hope by that time you'll have a computer in your cell and we'll be making full use of it. So all the very best. Bye-bye.
So that's it for this show. This is the first one we've done on Coracle of these. You're watching it on a Coracle laptop in prison. I'm humbled at the opportunity to bring you these stories straight into your cell. So my plea for you is, if you've enjoyed this show and you want us to do more, can you talk to your LSM or whoever, your CM, somebody, and say, we want more of these shows, we want more of these laptops, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.